In the bottles area, we started finding a lot of pewter objects. So artifacts made of pewter. As normal with the gold coins, they were in excellent conditions. You could see this information I'm giving to you now, you could see it still when you were diving. You didn't need to wait for Peter. Marks from the makers. We know them as makers' marks. Hello everyone and welcome to Underwater Adventures with Alex Mirabal. Today we will be talking about the discovery of gold coins and Victorian artifacts in Boa Vista Island in Cabo Verde. So let's dive into it. As part of our project in Cabo Verde, we decided to make a long exploration around the 10 islands of the archipelago. Cabo Verde is an archipelago in front of Africa, which has 10 islands, a beautiful place. And we were exploring each of the islands to look for shipwrecks. In the case of Boa Vista Island, Boa Vista, it's a small island in comparison to the rest of the islands of Cabo Verde, but it's the only one, or it's one of the few that have reefs around it. Most of the islands are volcanic, so they are very deep nearby the coast. But in the case of Boa Vista, has quite some reef around, quite far away from land, and that is the reason why there are so many wrecks in Boa Vista. We knew of some of the wrecks, but there were still parts of the islands that they were not explored. So we set up for that exploration end of 1999, beginning of 2000, and in February of 2000, Alain Urtebitz, dive supervisor in my team, he found this wreck that we will talk today in front of a place that is called Varandinha Point. That's what we call the wreck of Varandinha. And he came back with the information of this discovery. This a very big area. It's a wreck like most of the wrecks in reefs, which is very spread. It has a scattering area or a dispersion field of more than 370 meters from the anchor to the last cannon. It is quite a spread wreck.
Normally those wide spreads of artifacts, does it mean that the tide or the currents in that area are quite strong? Or could it be that the ship was losing artifacts while sinking?
It could be both. And also, in this case, for instance, in this area, it's not so much the current, but it's the strength of the waves.
Okay.
And when you...
So the wind.
When a ship sank, the waves with the wind, big waves that comes
Sure,
from
but what I was trying to say, instead of the currents, is the wind, is the power, is what I'm trying to understand.
Yes. But in some other places, the current plays a role in that. Even it could be during the sinking event, in the wreckage, when the ship strands and then start breaking apart and starts dropping cargo
Little by little.
or parts of the ship in the way. Or it could be that the ship stays in one place, in one piece, and then year after year of waves hitting it. And if the seabed is flat enough, it will allow for artifacts to really end up very far from the sinking place. So I think that one was the case of the Varandinha wreck. It stranded in the reef, and then years of centuries of waves and spreading these artifacts, which was for us a little bit challenging, but it was incredible the amount of artifact that the ship had. When Alain brought the news that he has found this ship, which is always something exciting because you are looking in areas that you don't know of any shipwreck and you find one, this is always good. But by his description, I personally was not very excited about it. Because, by his description, that would put the wreck somewhere in the 19th century. I may be wrong, but I always prefer older wrecks. The older the wreck, the better for me, for my curiosity. To have this thrill of the research. When it's 19th century, it could be. At the end of the video, you will see that I was mistaken in my perception. But okay, I was not super enthusiastic. We put it in our list. We decided to check it up already with a larger team, because this exploratory team were 3 divers and Zodiac. So it was a very little setup. They couldn't do more than register the main artifacts that you see on the seabed, like in this case was 1 anchor, 6 cannon, and scattering of artifacts. So in the year 2000, that was in February 2000, and when the season started in March, we had already planned to go excavating the Lady Burgess. I have talked about the Lady Burgess in other episodes. That is in the Joao Valente rock in the middle of the Atlantic, and the Lady Burgess, it's a wreck which is very sensitive to the weather. If the weather becomes a little bit strong, you have to move away from there because it's impossible to dive. And we plan to use this wreck in Varandinha Point, as I mentioned also in the episode of the Jean wreck in Mozambique, as a bad weather wreck. Okay, if conditions became rough in the Lady Burgess, then we move. It was a short trip, about 11 hours or something, but I mean, I said it's short, 11 hours, because it allows you to work in the wreck that the weather is coming bad, and then during the evening we move the boat, and next morning you're diving. I mean, you don't lose a working day. Next morning you are diving in the other wreck because you travel overnight.
I didn't know that. I was gonna ask if the travel would be used as a working day but in the boat for the admin stuff, or you would take the time of the 8, 10, 11, 9 hours, 11 hours, as you said, to take when most people are asleep. And yeah, that makes sense.
Well, it is a working day, even if you are on anchor by the side of the wreck, because the divers and the archaeologists, we are not working, but the rest of the crew is working. So for them, it doesn't make a big difference if we are on anchor or if we are navigating, because they are working anyway. So we don't lose a diving day. That's what I wanted to say, not a working day, but a diving day, because that for us is very important, that you are as most efficient as you can. So really moving the ship by day, for me, is like losing your time. If it's in an area which is full of reefs and stuff, and it's better or safer to travel by day, we do. But in the case of Cabo Verde, I mean, we have to go 11 hours through the Atlantic. There is no real danger if you go by night. So that was what we were doing. We were jumping from one wreck to the other, and then we started exploring this Varandinha wreck as we know it. The first thing we noticed is that the cannons, the 6 cannons that were in the place, they were a little bit different from the cannons that we are used to find in colonial shipwrecks around the world. These were shorter, fat, very robust. They were very sturdy looking cannons, and they were small. So one of the first things that we do once we made the site plan, that we mapped the site, we decide to take one of these cannons out and take it to the conservation center and try to look for marks or marks of origin or any mark that could give us any information. The process of conserving that cannon was long and painful because it's iron, and as I have mentioned before, iron gets oxidized and concreted very quickly and very heavily depending on the quality of the iron, but that you don't know beforehand, you only know after the conservation is finished. So Peter Darakot, our conservator, did a great job, but at the same time a very demanding one, because it took time, it took a lot of effort. I was in the expedition always waiting for Peter to call me and tell me if he has found any marks, and days and weeks passed because this was a very complex job. It could not have been done faster.
You cannot hurry the chemical balance that they need to find to be able to take the crustaceans, the stuff out of the artifact in a way that is safe. Yeah, see, you cannot rush that.
You cannot rush it. And you know, in my nature, I'm patient in some stuff, but when I have a curiosity or want an answer, I was like, yeah, Peter is taking too long.
Of course.
And then when we stop and we go to land to replenish, I went straight to the
I don't doubt it.
to see how the cannon was, and they were still working on this. Okay, this is an anecdote of my relationship with Peter, which was the best one in the world, but my natural anxiety of knowing from the canon information that I could not get from anywhere else. Well, finally, Peter finished the canon, and we found some marks that helped us shrinking down the dates and the provenance of the ship. In this case, the canon had inscriptions, which says one inscription was 12, a symbol of a crown, and the letters PR. That goes for 12 is the weight of the projectile that this cannon fires. In the crown, it means that it belongs to the British Navy, and the PR letters are for pounder. So it means that this cannon throws shots of 12 pounds. It's what is called a 12 pounder.
So the inscriptions, which makes total sense now that I think about it, the inscriptions can be the foundry or the place that made the cannon, but it can also be, and it should be, I assume, what is the use of the cannon, what is the ammunition that it takes, or what is the position that it... Yeah, makes sense.
Yes, that it has various marks, and even this one also have another mark. It was the weight, and in the cannons they use that a lot, because remember that they have to put it in ships, and they have to calculate how much weight are they bringing on the ship. So the weight of an artillery piece was important for them.
Totally, and I imagine, and this is, now it's me making maybe connections that are not supposed to, different sides of the ship might have to have different weights. Or that doesn't affect the way that you distribute. So you kind of need to know the weight of the artifacts or the ammunition or the weaponry to know where to position it, even within the ship, no?
Yes, absolutely. And also, if you were only transporting them, you also have to balance the ship with the weights of the things that you're bringing on board. So that was also the weight of the cannon, aside of the size of the ammunition that it fired. And it also has another mark, which was B and CO, that goes for Bowling and Company. And Bowling and Company were a factory, a foundry, which made cannons in England between 1800 and 1820. So we have there a cannon which was made in these 20 years, from 1800 to 1820, by the Bowling Company, and it has the crown that identifies as British. So there we go. We have a British weapon in a wreck. So we started thinking, okay, it might be British. Remember one of the episodes I made that you cannot take this alone. You have to take it with other information you get from different issues, from different aspects in the wreck site. So we continue our exploration of the wreck. The wreck, we divided, because as it was so long, this debris field was so long, we divided in 3 little fields named by the artifacts that you see more there. So it was the cannon area, because it has the 6 cannons there, the bottles area, because it has plenty of bottles or fragments of bottles visible on the seabed, and the anchor area where the anchor was, and the chain. That is another information we got since the very first day. The anchor looked like 18th, 19th century, and the use of chain instead of a rope, it also will put it in the late 18th or beginning of the 19th century. So we already had that, plus the manufacturing date or the manufacturing period of that carronade. That is the name of this kind of cannons, are carronades. And we started closing the circle in what ship could that have been, because we didn't have historical research to back up that specific site. We didn't have anything so clear that the ship was lost in this little area in front of Varandinha Point. We didn't have that. We continued the exploration of the wreck, and we then made the always exciting find of 3 gold coins that they were Georgius IV from 1829. They were, as normal with the gold coins, they were in excellent conditions. You could see this information I'm giving to you now, you could see it still when you were diving. You didn't need to wait for Peter. You can see it right away. And it has a legend that said Britanniarum rex fit def. That's in Latin, and words are cut, but that means King of Britain, defender of the faith. They were beautiful coins. We immediately sent them to the lab for their conservation, but we already knew, okay, we have coins 1829, we have a canon that is made between 1800 and 1820. So there we start putting things together. The other find that came to help us, in the beginning it didn't come to help us, it was to puzzle us, because we found something that we thought that they were silver coins. We are used to find silver coins in almost every wreck. And I have friends that they ask me, why do you find coins in every wreck? I mean, not every ship was transporting silver coins. Yeah, that's true. But also, no ship went out to navigate for 6 or 7 months and crossing continents without money. That makes no sense. Yeah. So they would have always the administration money in the ship, and in the case of an accident and the ship is a total loss, well, that little money would also be lost, and you may find it. I can
imagine that even maybe not heaps or huge amounts, but I can imagine even the tripulation might have had a coin or two to their name.
That also happens, that you find money from people, not even
from
the ship. That you identify quite quickly when you see the difference of denominations or for years or countries of origin of the coins, because it's like what you have today. If you go in your purse, you will have a €5 bill, a €20 bill, and a 50-cent coin. If you go to a bank, you will have stash of the same bill repeated many times. Well, the same with the finds in the shipwrecks. When you see this variety, it's most probably like personal belongings. And we found this, that we thought they were silver coins. Everyone was very happy. It was a big bunch of 114 of these coins. As silver coins, they were all concreted, they were covered. From those, you cannot retrieve the information
Still need
immediately,
Peter,
like in the gold coin. So then Peter's job to clean them up. And then he came back with a very interesting information. These were not coins, these were what he called, he being British as well, he knows very well what he's talking about, the currencies and stuff. These were commemorative tokens or medals. It was a coin-like object that was made to commemorate an event. In this case, was William IV and Adelaide in 1831 when he got crowned. There was this very strange looking like coins, artifacts in a metal which is not silver, it's called white metal, and it has a resemblance between pewter and silver and tin, but they were nicely made. Some of them were quite readable, because they were not only because of the crowning of William IV and Adelaide, but also birth date, the day they got married. So there were different events that they were registered and commemorate with these tokens. But it was a very interesting find. We haven't found this kind of medals in such an amount in any other wreck before, and I don't believe that after either. You find one or the other of these numismatic rarities, let's call it this way, but in a group of 114 that was new to us, obviously it was some sort of a cargo. They were taking it from one place to another to be distributed, I assume.
Okay, that was your assumption, because I was going to ask, do you think there were many condecorated military people on board maybe? Or did it look exactly that it was to give away a repetition, not necessarily something that people were wearing?
Oh, I don't think nobody was wearing that, because they were quite close together. If it would be in the belongings of different people, normally they will be more scattered between the wreck, but they were in a small
So they were probably
area.
in a box.
That is, yes, in a box or in a bag. This is why it's so important, the way you gather your data. Is these things that may seem irrelevant in the moment that you are doing the excavation or the exploration of the spatial relationship of objects between them, it could later on help you making a deduction closer to the truth, because we could think that, okay, everyone in the ship was owning one of these medals, but they would have ended up up then all
Totally.
scattered in the wreck site and not in one small area. So yeah, I think they were part of the cargo. And then together with these gold coins, the tokens, in the bottles area, we started finding a lot of pewter objects. So artifacts made of pewter, they were from plates, trays, basins, cutlery, pepper dispensers, salt dispensers, but a big quantity. And this helped us a lot in trying to understand a little bit better the wreck or trying to find out what the ship was, because pewter and good quality pewter, it almost always have marks from the makers. We know them as makers marks, but the makers marks are, in most of the cases, they are quite well researched. It's something that you can go back to other publications and you could find names and periods of times in which the maker worked or work under this name or make a company with this other person. So it has different names and different logos, different stamps that will identify the company. So that makes it quite interesting. We realized that the maker's mark in the pewter objects, they range from 1801 to 1853. So then again, we have more or less the same bracket of 1800 to 1800 something. In this case, 1853, it will give us an extra information because the carronades, these kind of cannons that we saw on the wreck and that we investigate, these cannons were kind of discarded around 1851. Yes, in 1851, they were discarded from the Royal Navy. So we should assume that this ship, it didn't leave port after 1851, so it was before that. And then you have the pewter and the maker of the cannon and the coins, the gold coins, which were 1829. So all falls in the bracket of 1800 to 1851, in this case 1853 with the pewter marks. But then again, after the pewter, we found a large amount of copper artifacts from the Industrial Revolution, which were incredibly rich in forms and shapes and functions. You have from locks on the doors, door locks, to gimbal lamps. It's a very interesting artifact because it's quite cute. You have an oil lamp with a mechanism, with a gimbal system that you would put in the bulkhead in the ship, and it would always be, it doesn't matter how much the ship moves, it will always be horizontal so the oil don't spill and don't get the fire. So very, very interesting artifacts, trays, quite beautiful objects. Some of them for us quite mysterious because we couldn't find the function of that artifact, because sometimes you don't find the artifact complete, you find just a part of the artifact, and that makes it really hard to imagine what you have found within a mechanism. It's difficult. Sometimes you cannot even end up doing it. And after years and years, you see some object which have a part that was the part that you found. It was a very nice wreck to explore. There was also a lot of pressed glass objects, like ashtrays and cups and little bottles of medicine or perfume. But the pressed glass objects, those were quite mundane. Those were not expensive objects. They were in every pub in England at the time. So, but it was this big variety of cargo, of artifacts that make this wreck so interesting. And here I have to accept that my preconceived idea that let's say modern wreck of the 19th century is less interesting than a 16th century wreck. Okay, I was wrong. This one was super, but super interesting. I'm very glad. Little by little, we stopped using it as a bad weather wreck, but we were giving it priority. So we really had to have a perfect day regarding the weather, a perfect day to go back to the Lady Burgess and keep on excavating there, because we wanted to stay in that wreck the most we could. The excavation of the wreck took a few months. I'm very happy of the results because we got a very nice collection of artifacts which datable features with stamps and the names of the makers, and this helped in the knowledge of this field tremendously, because sometimes you read in the books or in the publications that this person worked from this year to this year, and then you find, due to another artifact in the same wreck, that no, that he was actually working earlier than the time that is, let's say, official or described. So it is very interesting how this newly added information would help in the knowledge of humankind, or at least in the group of people who are interested in this field of knowledge. I wanted to tell you this story mainly just to, we never found which wreck it was, by the way. The wreck ended up being, till today, the Varandinha wreck, because with all this information, even having all these many elements that can give you data, that it's supposed to be easier to find the name of the ship, well, we couldn't. We didn't. I don't know if the ship was not that important to end up in the registries. I doubt it, because they register everything. And the amount of cargo that it was bringing, it was not small. It was a lot of cargo and quite interesting artifacts as well. So something happened. We couldn't find the identity of the ship, in the case that we had a lot of data to try to do it. I mean, we tried, but with a lot of data to succeed in that attempt. So I wanted to tell you this story because it's, in a way, it's a very different wreck of what you normally find. Well, thank you for watching the video till the end. Please, if you like it, give it a like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done it yet, share it with your friends. If you have any questions, or you have seen any of the artifacts that I have presented in the video and you have more information about it, please let me know in the comment section, and let's keep on diving.